What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our Kratom Addiction and Recovery Daily Devotional series. So we're back this week in Exodus. Last week we took a slight detour and we were going over some of my favorite verses, but this week we're back. And before we actually get started on picking up where we left off verse-wise and chapter-wise, I want to take today to talk about the wilderness, the season of the wilderness of addiction and recovery. So I've talked about this before, and we went over it a couple weeks ago, just I think in like a day or so of our devotionals. And I really want to take the time to talk about this with you guys because I've had the chance to connect with some of you. And I know that a lot of you guys are going through this right now, or you're going to be going through it coming up here in your recovery process. So I wanted to take a day to really focus on this. So we're going to be talking about practical tools for the wilderness. And what is the wilderness of addiction and recovery? We talked about this before, but just to go over it again real quick. The wilderness is a time and a place in your recovery process, or it can also be in your addiction, where it is a time of uncertainty. It's a time of unknowing. It's a time of not knowing what's to come, not knowing how our needs are going to be met or when they're going to be met. It's a time when our faith is often tested and we are often challenged in different ways. So the wilderness is not an easy place to be in. And it can take shape in different ways. It can take shape in a mental aspect, like when you're experiencing depression, anxiety, panic attacks, that sort of thing, when you're in your addiction or in the early parts of your recovery. And so you can have this time of, for me, I had really bad depression, and I also had really bad anxiety, especially at first when I first quit. And for a good solid 6 months to a year after quitting, you can be experiencing anhedonia, which means the inability to feel pleasure in any way. And you get this really emotionally kind of just washed out, really gray feeling that comes over you and your life. You're not able to feel joy from anything that you do. A lot of times you can feel just bored with anything that you're doing, and that it's not capturing your attention the way that it used to. So with hobbies, relationships, aspects where you're hanging out with somebody that you love. It can even be as simple as scrolling through YouTube or social media or whatever, and things that used to kind of capture your attention before just seems boring. And that's how anhedonia takes shape for a lot of people. So these are some of the mental aspects of being in the wilderness. There are also physical aspects as well, and that can take shape as far as a lot of us have lost weight during our addiction, and there's a time when we're really drained and we're really malnutritioned and we're really emaciated from losing so much weight from our kratom addiction. It can take shape in different health problems that you may have had come up during your addiction. Like for me, my whole endocrine, which is my hormonal system, was completely wrecked in my addiction. And so when my hormones were all out of whack, that's a big part of our health and our well-being and our body. And so I had a lot of different symptoms that came from that. There can be physical symptoms like losing your hair, which happened to me. Premature aging, where your skin gets so dry and wrinkly because of the kratom that you start to prematurely age. Other physical symptoms that I'm trying to think of, I have a chronic pain condition. That was part of the reason why I even ended up on kratom. And for me, when I was in the worst of my addiction and also getting off of kratom, it really exasperated my chronic pain. So that was another physical aspect of being in the wilderness for me. There's a spiritual aspect to being in the wilderness, which was what we were talking about a couple weeks ago when we left off in Exodus, where this is a time when our faith is going to be tested and our faith is going to be challenged, because it's a time when often, we're questioning where God is. We're questioning how long this is going to take and how long we're going to feel this way. And we often end up going to God. We were talking about this in Exodus, just like his people, when they were in the wilderness, were complaining and saying, God, where are you? Like, at least when we were in captivity, our needs were met. And so that goes on a lot of times for us in our wildernesses, where we wonder where God is. We wonder how long this is going to take and how long we're going to feel the way that we do, and how long we're going to struggle the way that we do. And I say all the time that for a lot of us, we question if we've done permanent damage to our minds and our bodies and our lives. And so we're in this place of wondering where God is and what he's doing and how long it's going to take. So spiritually, we're being tested and we're being challenged as well as being mentally and physically challenged. So that's just a general idea of what the wilderness is. And I know that a lot of you are in it right now. And for me, I was in it for a long time after my recovery. I don't want to scare you by telling you my recovery process and how long it took, because each and every one of us is different. And depending on so many different factors, like your age, if you have any other health conditions going on, how much you were using and how long you were using for really plays into how long your recovery process is going to be. But for me, it took about 1.5 years to really get regulated and balanced back into a new normal and to feel simple joys again, and for the physical aspects and the emotional and mental aspects to really level out. So I want to talk about a little bit too. Y'all know I love God here. That's the purpose of this channel. But I also love learning about how our brains and bodies work, and especially when there's addiction involved. And I love to break down how addiction works, because it gives insight for me in my process, and then also for addicts that I know and I love. So it helps me to understand them and myself more. So what's going on a physical level, since we just got into the spiritual side of things, is that when we are in any addictions, it hijacks our neurochemistry, which is our brain chemistry. And it also hijacks literally all the systems in our body. When we are taking this substance, whatever it may be, whether it's kratom, coffee, hard drugs, weed, even some behavioral addictions can do this as well. And what happens is our neurochemistry changes when we take these substances, and it causes our brains to create lots of dopamine, which is the neurochemical for feeling happy, satisfied, motivated, content. And what happens is when we're in our addiction, this unearned dopamine that we're getting in large amounts takes over our whole brain chemistry. And especially if you're using kratom or any other substance for an extended amount of time, a lot of us go years on kratom. What's happening is that our brains and our bodies are so used to the kratom being a part of everything that when we taper off or we quit cold turkey, and then after our quit, our brains and our bodies are basically freaking out. It has no idea what's going on. It's so used to this unearned dopamine and these other neurochemicals that are being produced from the high of kratom or whatever substance. And so there is this rewiring and this recalibrating process that has to go on in our brains and our bodies. And essentially what that is it's our bodies and our brains healing. And it is 100% necessary to you getting back to normal. And so that is a very technical explanation of what the wilderness is. The wilderness is this healing process that your brain and your body is going through. And that's why this isn't a linear process. For all of us, we're not going to know how long it's going to take. And so that's what lends to this questioning and this wondering and, this whole like, how long? I've been asked so many times at this point, how long will I feel this way? How long will I have the anhedonia? How long will I have the anxiety and the depression and all of these other physical symptoms that are going on? And so that's the wilderness of it. We don't know how long it's going to take. But I hope that explaining to you what's going on a physical level will help to shed some light into your situation. And sometimes understanding what's going on gives us insight into the process. And so that when I learned a lot about this, I was able to see that okay, this sucks, but it's not going to last forever. And this is necessary for my brain and my body to heal. And so that's why I share that with you. Okay, so we're going to get into practical tools for the wilderness. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. So first, we're going to start off with faith-based tools, and then we're going to get into other tools that we can do in our everyday lives. So being in the wilderness is a great opportunity. I've shared this with a lot of you before, and it is an awesome opportunity to push into your connection and your closeness with God. When we're in this place of not knowing how long something is going to take and having our faith tested, it's a perfect opportunity for your faith to grow. And we can do this by praying, it doesn't need to be a formal prayer. You can just sit down or do whatever, walk, whatever you're doing, as you're falling asleep at night, and just talk to God. That's one of the most beautiful things about having a personal relationship with God through Jesus, is that he's our best friend. He's our counselor. He's our confidant that we can tell our deepest, darkest fears and our deepest, darkest secrets to. And we can go to him and talk to him like he's our best friend. We can share our heart with him like he is, our counselor that we're paying to see. We can cry out to him. That's really important. We can't try to sugarcoat things with God. We can't try to put on our best face for God. We have to be real with God. We have to humble ourselves before God. And crying out to him, whether that be with tears or whether that just be, a cry of our heart where we're yearning for, answers, and we're yearning for change, and we're yearning for progress. We can take that and we can turn that into a cry out to God. I shared before what lamenting is. I love this word. It's an old school word that means a passionate expression of grief. And I think that is so beautiful. And we can lament to God. We can passionately express our grief to God. And this is a way that we can grow in our intimacy and in our connection with him. We can just be still with him. I shared last week in one of my favorite verses, be still and know that I am God, that when I was in my kratom addiction and in my recovery, I was so sick, you guys. I had underlying health stuff and I was grieving. And so I had a lot of opportunities in that time. I was too sick. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't work. I could hardly function. And so I had to be still a lot. And that gave me the chance to really be still with God. You know, and it says, be still and know that I am God. Because in that stillness, we have such an opportunity to get to know him on this deeper level that when we're running around and busy in our lives, we don't have the chance to do. We can meditate on his greatness. We can meditate on a Bible verse. I've meditated on 2 words, Jesus wept, because I love that. I love imagining that. And I've meditated on that for days before. I've meditated on verses for months before. We can meditate on the cross. I do this sometimes as I pray, where I just literally envision Calvary, you know, Jesus on the cross at Calvary. And I literally envision in my brokenness, in my pain, in my sadness, just literally like army crawling through the grass on the hill at Calvary. Whew, I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it, because it evokes so much emotion in me when I think about this, of just like crawling and dragging yourself to the foot of the cross. And like in the best way that you can imagine possible, just like looking up from that perspective of like literally being on the ground in the dirt, hurting, you know, weeping, and just, you know, wrapping your arms around the foot of the cross and looking up to Jesus in that perspective. It is so humbling and it is so beautiful. And so just meditating on that, thinking about how the sky looks on behind, you know, Calvary, where, you know, all of heaven and earth was mourning and weeping Jesus's suffering and his death. And I imagine how dark the sky was and how everything looked in that environment and how Jesus looked and how it felt for those individual drops of blood to fall upon me as I held on to the foot of the cross. And so meditating on that, it doesn't even need to be where you're praying or you're saying anything. It's just literally meditating on it and thinking about it. And these can be some ways that you can push into your closeness and your intimacy with God. I shared this before many times as well, worship, you know, through praise and thanksgiving, and that can be with or without music. You can just be doing the dishes and just praising God and praising him for his holiness and for his sovereignty and for his greatness and for his beauty and for his vastness. A big part of this too is surrendering. You know, when we surrender to God, especially when we're in a place of pain and struggling and hardship and not knowing how long something is going to take, when we surrender to God, there is great power in that. And this is something that can help you grow as a person during this season of the wilderness of your life. And, you know, we're surrendering to God's sovereignty. You know, God, what his sovereignty means is that he's in control of all of this. We can't control how long we're going to feel bad. We can't control how long it's going to take for our brains and our bodies to heal. We can't control how much pain we're in, physical, mental, emotional, whatever it is. We can't control that. God controls it. And so when we surrender to him and we surrender to that sovereignty, it's so much that we can learn and grow from. And no matter how hard it is, have faith that God is making a way during this season of the wilderness in your life. Whether you are in the depths of your addiction, whether you don't know how you're going to quit, whether you're about to jump off tomorrow off of your taper or cold turkey, whether you are in your quit right now and you're at day 1, day 7, day 14, day 53, day 365, no matter where you're at, have faith that God is going to make a way. And I love this verse, although we're in Exodus right now. I'm going to revisit this verse because we've gone over it before, because it's really relevant to what we're talking about. And it's Isaiah 43:19. Behold, I am making a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Dude, come on. It doesn't get any better than that. God will make a way through the wilderness and rivers in the desert. I promise you that. So those are some tools for you, some practical tools for you spiritually as you're in this season of the wilderness. So now we're going to go on to things that we can do in our everyday lives. What's so important, and I've gone over this before, is diet. What we eat is a big part of how we feel and how we heal. Excuse me. Cutting back on and eliminating entirely processed foods, excuse me, sugar and caffeine will be very beneficial for you. And increasing nutrient-dense foods that help our bodies to heal and to rebuild. I am a big advocate for a nutrient-dense animal foods-based diet. If you are plant-based, I respect you, but I tried it and it didn't work for me. And the way that I look at it is that when we're in our kratom addiction or coming out of it, we were on a plant-based diet for all of that time because we were, a lot of us, choking down ounces and ounces of plant matter for years. So that a lot of times wrecks our guts, and nutrient-dense animal foods like meat, seafood, eggs, dairy are really easy for our bodies to absorb the nutrients out of. And I know that for those of you that are plant-based for different reasons, that won't be, the route that you take. But finding nutrient-dense plant foods like avocado, different like coconut oil. I can't do nuts and seeds, and I don't really encourage them, but finding those nutrient-dense plant foods is a really good idea too. Exercise, I cannot emphasize this enough. Exercise is going to release natural endorphins, and it's going to give you a sense of accomplishment when you push yourself to exercise, no matter how bad you feel. And you can do this no matter how bad you feel. You can exercise. And I know some of us are working full-time jobs, and that alone is exercise in itself. But it's really important to tire yourself out and get those endorphins going during this time. So walking, running, lifting weights, anything like that, but anything where you're able to really push your body and hopefully get a good sweat on. Practice acceptance. In the Quitting Kratom subreddit, a lot of people say, embrace the suck. And that's a really valuable thing to think of. Sometimes there's going to be no way of feeling better anytime soon. And a lot of times you just have to embrace it. And I know that it's hard, and I know it's painful, and I know it's a challenge. But when we embrace this, when we are embracing the suck, we are accepting what's going on. When we accept something, it helps us to try to stop running from it. In our kratom addiction, we are running to kratom to feel better. And it gives us, for a time, it gives us that quick fix of feeling better right then and there. And we have to get to a point where we accept that whatever we were trying to self-medicate in our addiction, that we have to accept it, whether it be a physical thing like physical pain, whether it be emotional pain, whether it be loss, whatever it is, we have to embrace the suck and accept it. And I understand that for some of you, there are real medical conditions, like, people have been in car accidents and they ended up on kratom because they have real serious chronic pain that takes away their ability to do anything in their lives. So I understand that there's going to be more of a challenge for those of you that are going through that. But there is an element to embracing the suck and accepting what's going on in your life that will also lead you into other things that can be healthier for you to treat these kind of conditions, instead of going to kratom. And kratom, for a lot of us, causes a lot of damage in our lives. And there are oftentimes a lot of other ways that can treat these different conditions that will cause less damage to our minds and our bodies and our lives. So lastly, the last tool that I want to go over is focus on the positives. I know that it's hard. For me, it was really, really hard to find anything to be positive about. But one of the things, like we were just talking about in the faith tools, that focusing on God making a way. God is working in your life whether you know it or not. God is working in the wilderness and making a way whether you know it or not. And so focusing on that, not trying to focus on the outcomes, but just focusing on, God's faithfulness to you, and that He is making a way even when we can't see it right now, is a really good thing to focus on the positives during this season. Focus on the fact that my body is healing. I told you, I thought I had done permanent damage to my body, but really my body was just healing. So focusing on that, like, you know what? I feel like crap right now, but my body is healing. I am not flooding my brain and my neurochemistry with all this unearned dopamine, and my body and the systems in my body with all of this stuff from this drug. And it doesn't feel good right now, but it's because it's healing. And God is good, and God will heal you. It's not going to be a miraculous thing a lot of times where it happens overnight. It's a slow process, but you are healing, and focusing on that is really important. Focusing on the impermanence of this, that, I don't feel good right now, but it's not going to last forever. And lastly, I want to share with you this tool of cultivating real patience. It's not going to happen overnight, guys. You're not going to feel like, okay, I can chill with this now, even though it's uncomfortable. You're going to freak out. I freaked out for a while, and I wanted to know how long it was going to take. And I got really impatient. But that's a part of the process of cultivating true patience, is because you freak out for a little bit, and then you come to the acceptance. And then you're able to find this place of peace and of chilling in this discomfort and chilling in this season of the wilderness and going, okay, it's not better yet, but it's a little bit better than it was yesterday. And even if it doesn't feel a little bit better, at least I'm not taking kratom today. So that's something that's a little bit better. And really cultivating patience that way. And like I said, it took 1.5 years for me to get back to a new normal. And so I had a long time of cultivating that patience. I'm still going through this. You know what? We're talking about seasons of the wilderness in addiction and recovery. But dude, you're going to go through this kind of stuff in one way or another throughout your whole life. When you're far into your recovery like me, it may not be the season of, the wilderness of post-acute withdrawal syndrome or acute withdrawals, but your life is going to take on different challenges and different wildernesses. And so cultivating these tools and patience and faith is really going to help you as you move forward in your life, because nothing is ever going to be perfect. But these things that are being cultivated in you, and your faith growing and your relationship growing with God, is what's going to help you to move forward a better person so that you're able to handle the things to come in your life in a better way. And that's the purpose of all of this, you guys, is that we are being refined through this. It is hard. This is some of the hardest work that you're ever going to do. But what's happening is that it is refining you, and you are becoming a better person. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be difficult, but you're going to move forward from this a better person. So with that, I encourage you to share where you're at in the comment section below. And tomorrow we're going to pick up with a formal continuing in Exodus. And we have I'm going to give you a heads up. We have some heavy stuff coming this week. It's really cool, but it's going to be heavy. So stay tuned, and I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.